Welcome to a new episode of Story Mode, guys. Today, we are reviewing Conker's Bad Fur Day, a retro video game review for you.
How long did you spend on that one?
However long it took me to just say it then.
Good on you.
It's called Improv, Ben.
I'm new here.
Yeah. You were here last time.
Yeah, you were here
And
last
Burtis
time.
is back. Burtis from our Zelda Countdown. And our
and
Let's Plays. And Raymond from Co-Operatives, the web series, is back. He was
Played
with us.
Conkers with it, yeah.
He didn't play it with us.
well,
I played it.
yeah.
You guys just watched.
We were in a... he made us watch!
I liked it.
Yeah, he was... we were in the room while...
Yeah, so, yeah.
Chris
Anyway,
played the
so-
surfboard.
As sort of a prelude to this, I guess, if you want to not have Conker spoiled for you 15 years too late, we have a Let's Play on the same channel. You can go watch it. It's probably like just below this video.
Well, then
Scroll down on the main page and you'll find it. It's a good Let's Play. I like it. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
well
it was
for us.
a good run.
Chocolate backs. I loved it.
Yes. That's not what we're talking about today, though. Today, we're just gonna kind of go back and talk about Conker's Bad Fur Day. So I have some things I do want to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm gonna open up the floor. I'm gonna let Ben go first. If
Okay.
there's anything that you want to be like, this was off the top of my head. I forgot about this about Conker. Or something.
Well, it's really just an overall thing, and I don't want to get into too deep of an analysis of this, because I could probably go on it for hours like it. But it's one of very few games that embraces the themes and ideas of absurdity. Not just saying, oh, this game is absurd. No, it's like, it really embraces absurd humor, absurd ideologies, and all that stuff, which is what I really appreciate.
Yeah, absurdity not just in the sense of like just the word absurd, as in the philosophy.
Yeah, the philosophy.
Like if you were to call, you could call Conker's Bad Fur Day probably an absurdist game, and that would be a good description of it.
But it really is one of the only ones of its kind. I feel like if somebody could quote another game at me, I would be open to it. I can't.
You could
think
probably
of it
argue
off the
this
top of
like the South Park game.
my head. Yeah. But is it more satirical though? Which I guess could still feed into absurdist.
Yeah, because they're kind of both. Like it's sort of, I don't know. It's been long enough since I last played the game, because the game itself isn't a very satirical game. It's the show is more satirical.
Yeah.
Stick. I am talking kind of specifically about the Stick of Truth, because there are other South Park games that aren't worth playing.
Well, and there's gonna be a new one coming out.
Yeah.
But aside from that, like, South Park I guess is a good example, but mainstream games that a lot of people played and talk about, I can't think of many. And if I do, I could probably count them on one hand. You know what I'm saying?
It's not a very popular sort of thematic realm for a video game to play around in, absurdism like that. I'm sure there are some more. I'm having a hard time off the top of my head.
Jam and Earl.
Yeah, I mean,
Boogerman.
Absurdist. Okay, so I'm not sure you're quite following what absurdism sort of is. Absurdism is sort of the concept that
nothing is real, I guess.
Yeah, there is, like...
It's the opposite of...
Yeah, when we talked about objectivism a couple weeks ago in Bioshock, absurdism is sort of almost... It's not quite opposite, but like it is fair. Yeah, it's very much different.
I mean...
it's sort of the closest philosophical sort of school to it is existentialism, which is completely opposite objectivism.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the idea of existentialism is that I go out and find meaning in the world myself. Yeah. You know, there is no implicit meaning to, anything. Anyone is allowed to take a look at something and go, I feel it's about this. And someone else can, walk up right out and go, well, I feel it's about this. But their views are completely equally valid. And that's what existentialism is. Whereas objectivism would then break down these opinions and go, well, this one is more right because it's addressing the idea of this kind of value. It'd have some sort of breakdown within there to help you kind of evaluate. Okay. And that's sort of the way absurdity kind of comes from, is the idea that there is no sort of central truth. I feel like I've totally got this wrong. I feel like we need a dictionary.
No, this is because our former roommate was huge into this, and at first I opposed him on it, and then I ended up doing papers on it in college because of my various conversations with him. And it's not like nihilism, where it's just like everything is fake, so thus there's no point in life.
Nihilism is that there is no meaning anywhere. Existentialism is the idea that you can find and imbue life with your own meaning, and that's the purpose of it. Yeah,
and absurdism is like a subculture of that, if you will. That it's not inherently negative. It's just, it is what it is, and you make anything out of it that you want to make out of it. It's why shows like Tim and Eric, awesome job.
Well, it's not even that. Absurdism doesn't have to be that. Yeah, absurdism doesn't have to be like wildly out there like Tim and Eric. This is weird because this is one of those weird examples I can think of, but my short film from school, The Kite, is actually something like, if you want to go looking around on YouTube for that, it's not necessarily worth it. I'm just bringing this up as like
as
something that's not even that like humorous. It's actually very straightforward and more dramatic. I think probably one of the best descriptors for it would be it's absurdist.
Especially because now I'm thinking about how it begins and how it ends. Yeah, I can probably.
I mean, it's very much like Conker's Bad Fur Day. It's sort of like a... I'll break it down real quickly, but yeah, so for my thesis project at school, I shot a short film in which a guy gets a kite. His kite is stuck in a tree, and a cute girl comes by, so he decides to try and climb the tree to impress the girl. Only when he gets up in the tree, he falls out, and the kite doesn't get unstuck. It gets unloosed from the tree, but it's still tied to the tree, kind of just floating in the air. So it's just sort of like, he goes through all this effort for nothing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of absurdism, and that's sort of like, as you bring it up, that's Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Exactly.
He goes through everything to get something he doesn't even want. Yeah. And to lose the one thing he does want.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the few games where you have a character who doesn't really change at all. He pretty much goes through, and he's the same at the beginning as he is at the end. The only thing is his power situation has changed.
I'd say that, at least in terms of like characters that you don't roleplay as, because if you're roleplaying as a character, it's very easy for you to not have any character growth. And in fact, I feel like that's one of the biggest problems in a lot of roleplaying games. Is they don't give you space to sort of like, I want to be a dick at the beginning of the game, but then I want to be a decent person at the end of it, and feel like I got rewarded for changing rather than just always being good.
I agree.
I'd like to see that in a roleplaying game.
I would too.
But we're talking about Conker.
Yeah. So it's just another one of those things I find interesting about the game as a whole, where, not only, and I guess it feeds back to the idea of absurdism, not why the game is so representative. I mean, like, at the end of the game, what happens? The alien is launching at you, and the game freezes, and then he starts talking to the developer. Like, it's totally shattering that you are, and making you recognize, if you didn't know before, you're in a video game and your main character knows it.
What's hilarious too is that like it actually is like the game kind of stating out, you're playing a video game, only never once in the game do they have the line, this isn't a movie, this isn't a video game, which is like my least favorite line ever. Stop writing that line, people. It's never a good line. In any movie it shows up in, it's the worst cliche. Or video game or whatever.
So what if they say it's not a movie, but in a video game?
Yeah, Uncharted, I don't care. I know they've said that at least in one Uncharted game, and it just bugs me.
I can see about it, because it instantly draws you out, and you're like, I know what I'm doing, like,
As opposed to, like, Conker's Bad Fur Day, just, like, completely breaking the fourth wall.
Embracing the context.
Actually, it doesn't even really break the fourth wall. It actually completely just...
Yeah, but he never, I don't think he ever addresses you as a gamer, but he does address the developer.
Yeah, he addresses the developer. It's kind of weird. It's like he breaks, like, the third and a half wall. I wonder what you'd actually call that.
Yeah.
Although he does break an event, he does occasionally talk to us.
Yeah.
Is he, though? Because if you think about it, is he technically not talking...
Well, there's the one at the very beginning. It's like, by the way, if for whatever reason you want to skip any of these wonderful cutscenes, like, he's talking to us.
Yeah.
Like, he's talking to you.
Yeah, that's fair.
There are a couple moments like that in the game where he does actually step out and break the fourth wall and talk directly to the audience, to you playing the game.
Yeah, I don't know. Those are the two things that really stick out to me about Conkers and why I enjoyed it when I was younger, although I probably shouldn't have played it at the age that I did.
I don't know. Honestly, there's really nothing in that game that's sort of like that inappropriate for a teenager.
Well, when did the game come out?
2001.
Oh, yeah, I guess I would have been like 12, so it's not the worst thing.
I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean... The whole part of the premise of South Park isn't that like it's for kids. It's these are how kids talk, and it's true. When you're third and fourth grade, you talk like that. And you have the worst fucking potty mouth unless you're around your parents. Yeah. And
I was a slow bloomer on that, but
I could see that.
Yeah, you were.
But it's sort of that's kind of how things are. So the idea that the things that have crude humor in them aren't for like little teenagers or preteens is like no. Kind of, there's sometimes a little bit more for them because you grow out of some of that crude humor as you get a bit older.
Yeah.
Like when you're really young, sometimes you'll find something funny just because it's crude, but like there has to be something on top of the crudeness to make it funny for me at this point. Usually.
But it's also such an absurd game that it makes you forget that there's really no agency in the game, if you really think about it. I mean,
How so?
I don't know. Everything's predetermined how they're supposed to play out. There's
Well, I mean,
nothing
that's
you
kind
can
of
do.
the same for all adventure games. You can kind of break.
Well, yeah, no,
because
for
they
sure.
always end up in the same spot.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just kind of a weird thing. I don't want to say it clashes, but because I'm trying to formulate, if I were to have a thesis on it, like what it would be. But, you know, for how many times to break the fourth wall and like kind of address like this world that you could potentially change, you don't really get to do much to change it.
No.
Other than the windmill.
That's kind of I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to kind of draw criticism of. One, because it's one of those, just games at that time you didn't really get to do much change in. It's sort of agency at the time was measured a little bit differently than it is now. So
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah, but it's one of those where I never feel like I don't have agency, even though at the end of the game I don't get what I'm accomplishing.
Yeah.
Or I don't get what I set out to accomplish. I don't get home.
Yeah. Yeah, which is essentially the entire premise of the game. If anybody is confused up to this point, you got home, you got drunk one night, and you're trying to get home, but you took a wrong turn.
It's also like one of the best setups for a game.
It is the greatest setup.
Yeah, it doesn't even have like, oh man, and then there's this whole legend of something going on beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Or there's, like all these other ridiculous things that usually
it follows
cartoony games have to kind of get into. And it's just like, nope, you got drunk, had a blackout, and you woke up somewhere strange.
And you getting to every situation is like, the South Park critics, since we've brought them up a few times, have this really kind of great video about how to write scenes.
Yeah.
And it's like, if this happens because this happens. And so that's how the whole game plays out.
Yeah.
Because at any point because I remember, I think when we were playing, we even said, why doesn't he just turn back around and try to find a new way? It's because something else has happened, which has drawn him into a new situation. I mean, you get fucking sapped in the back of the head before the whole D-Day shit happens.
To sort of clarify your point there about the South Park guys, there's a really great talk they have. If you're interested in writing, I suggest find it out. But what they essentially say is that if you're writing a script, writing anything really, to tell a good story, you want to have your sort of story beats connected by therefore or but. Like, this happens, therefore this happens. But this happens, but this happens, therefore this happens. Because they'd find that when they were writing South Park episodes, that they'd have stronger episodes when they wrote that way, as opposed to if they got an episode and they had ands.
And this.
Yeah, and this
also
happens.
this.
Or also this happens.
Yeah.
Or, even meanwhile this happens is still kind of interruptive. Whereas, like, if you kind of, everything is a chain that's like the cause and effect.
It's exactly. It's all it is cause effect, and it's what Conker says.
It is.
It is a series of cause and effects.
It is one of those where when we went back to kind of play through it, I was kind of. It had been enough years that I wasn't entirely sure how good, or well plotted the story was. And while some elements of it are just like, what is going on here? What are we doing here? Walking randomly into the barn and just like, why does he just randomly walk in here? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Except that it still does. There's still this kind of weird layer of video game logic that they're working on and playing off of to make everything work. And it's part of, I think it's, they really lay into it in certain ways. Yeah. And it works well for them.
I think I've talked enough. Burtis, your thoughts?
Yeah, Burtis, did you have something you wanted to mention?
I mean, I guess one of my favorite things about the game is it's one of the best parody sequences of like any video game ever, because like games from that time did try and do a lot of that, where they did like Gex Enter the Gecko and
I do remember that Gex 64,
where they were like homages to movies, where they had levels inspired by all these different like tropes and humors and everything else, but it left you feeling empty and kind of weak. But Conkers, when they do any kind of like homage and entrance to that, it leaves you with a very strong feeling of like, this really got what that was going for, and that feeling.
I'd say that's true, because it's one of those where it's like, like when we did, if you rewatch, we're going to kind of, I will end up referencing a few things that happened in our Let's Play, because like you can watch that and see what we're kind of responding to there and what kind of got us going.
This is all based on our experiences and voices anyway, so.
Especially our voices.
Meta. Anyway, but this is like, you get this great Matrix scene. Just before that, you're Saving Private Ryan is a little bit before that, and it's like it's literally rip off. But they do a generally great job each time of just being like, here's some just fun, funny kind of thing, and in a way that makes sense. Because I do kind of remember, like, some games that used to do parodies, I don't see a lot. That's not something that's common anymore at all, almost. Yeah. And it was weird because like that was actually really common back in the late 90s, as I remember. But I don't remember any game that did anywhere near as well as Conker's Bad Fur Day did.
But I think it's in the D-Day episode that we do when you do the invasion that we make the comment that the reason why it worked was because it so perfectly replicated what it was drawing from. It wasn't just an homage. Here's this cute image. Like, people are getting shot as the doors open. You fall into the water. The sound is muffled as bullets are hailing through. You get out. There's the ringing. Like, it's everything.
It actually kind of brings me to the one point I wanted to put up about Conker. It's just, especially for a game that's as old as it is, I didn't realize it at the time until I was replaying it now, how well mixed sound it has.
Oh, yeah.
The music is fantastic.
Yep.
And beyond that, I think I might have pointed out at least once, the editing is really damn good.
Oh, you didn't just point it out once, but...
Yeah, I'm sure I didn't, because I think that's something I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And it's especially
fair,
for especially for a comedy like game, that's essential, like getting the editing right. And it's never off. It's always very perfectly done.
Yeah. I mean, even when you think about like how they edit to when the dinosaur bites the back of the dude's butt, how it quickly shoots in and zooms.
Yeah.
Like it just to get that effect to you, and it literally hits you in the face.
And it's like it's got better camera work than a lot of games now.
Yeah.
It's kind of astounding,
It's
really how
true.
well put together like it is. Like on a cinematic level, I don't really like using that for games, but this is kind of the elements that we're talking about. Is the more cinematic elements of the game. But even then, like, yeah, it's one of those where it's one of the things I'm noticing a little more now lately that I'm paying attention to games, and it's sound, and especially since I've been doing more sound and stuff for cooperative stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, the sound in Conker's Bad Freddy has a fantastic just sound mixing of effects and stuff like that is generally really good. But the music, like, I think I point out that just about every other episode, listen to this music. And there's even one I like point out, go back an episode and listen to this music because it's fantastic. There's some really good stuff in here.
I mean, it's one of those things that, like, for better or for worse, a lot of games have drifted away from providing a narrative rather than, and we'll get into this into a later story mode, and rather than giving control into your hands.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about camera angles. I mean, how many times are you in a game and even if you're in a cutscene, you might have control over how the camera's moving.
Yeah.
The controls, they're putting more and more control into your hands as games get further and further expanded or whatever.
It's sort of like the style at the time. It's sort of like I think Half-Life 2 sort of started that trend.
Yeah.
It's sort of because
I'd agree
all
with
the
that.
scenes all the scenes sort of happen in real time. So you kind of see a lot of that being replicated in places because it's sort of favorable to storytelling in video games.
Which is why I appreciate games that Naughty Dog, I guess, to generalize of what they do, because they kind of go back to that. We're providing you a narrative.
Here's actually another one. It's like an example of a game that sometimes I think has bad editing. Especially the first Uncharted game, I think it has moments that are just like kind of just off.
I'd have to go back and pay attention. I'll take your word for it at this point.
I mean, it's a little bit of an older game, but it's like, even then, something as late as that and really well put together, it still has a couple of moments to it that just not working. But as Conker is just, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so used to it. I played it enough times that I know what it looks like, too. Yeah. So it could be just unconsciously in my head.
Yeah, because honestly, I can't think of much of the editing.
But I do want to, as we're sitting here talking about music, talk about it, because I remember, you know what? Conker's Bad Fur Day may have one of the best original songs ever written for a video game.
The Great Mighty Pooh?
Yeah.
The Great Mighty Pooh, yeah.
Slopra.
Excellent.
But yeah, I mean, and I brought this up many times in while we were going through the Let's Play. How many times that whenever you bring up that game, that's the first thing that comes up. It's well written. It's what you remember.
It's hilariously put together. It's well written, both on just funny like lines, but also just sounds great. Like they got
a real opera singer to do it.
And it makes it doubly hilarious what's going on.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting about it too is, like, I think I pointed this out in the Let's Play. When you watch, like, most of the swears in the game are censored out.
Oh, yeah.
Except in the song.
Yep.
Like, so you hear shit several times within the song. It's the only time it's not censored pretty much in the whole game. Yep. And it's just like something about it works. Because I think censoring words in a song it doesn't work as well.
No.
I mean, listen to any radio edit or something.
Humorous music is probably just about one of the hardest things you can probably do in terms of, like, humor or art, period.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, there's a reason why it's like you can think of the people off the top of your head to do that, and, like,
Weird Al, Bo Burnham.
Weird Al, Tenacious D, Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah, Bo Burnham, but still only on one hand.
And and maybe if you really wanted to, you can include, like, the Bare Naked Ladies, because they write humorously.
That's fair, yeah.
Because a lot of their music is more humor intended, but it's not like the same kind of humor as any of those other bands. It's like, more just like, here's some humorous things. It's kind of the same way. That's more of like kind of a genre, just like lightheartedness, kind of Weezer you could put in there for a lot of their music too.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to half the songs of Blue album. But yeah.
Well, it was the one from last year. Thank God for Girls.
Yeah.
That is very clearly supposed to be a humorous song.
But while we're on the topic of like things the game has done really well, actual background animation and like the little mushrooms that just dance everywhere.
You got obsessed with the background, and for good reason.
Yeah, and even like textures as far as like the walls until you get to the Dracula level where it gets a little shitty. But like they don't reuse a lot of textures. They actually like crafted them and made them like look fleshed out and just beautifully.
In its fairness, though, I don't think Conker's Bad Fur Day has nearly as large a world as say like Banjo-Kazooie even. Because like Banjo-Kazooie, you go to 10 different levels. Like Conker's Bad Fur Day is a small handful of them, and a lot of the areas are kind of small. So there may not be as much as like development. Like I get what you're saying. Like they did a very good job of like you don't really run into very similar stuff. But to give credit to some other games, there doesn't seem to be quite as many art assets that they needed to make in the first.
No, but I mean, you even look at like the barn level where half that level looks one way, but then the other half of it looks completely different, and all the animations and colors are completely like split. But it's not done in such a way that like it's a noticeable shift.
Yeah.
Well, and the guys behind it are very keen on providing the narrative, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't have 10 different or 20 different levels to go. Because they're like, this is what we want you to go through, this is what we want you to experience, and we're not straying from that. And that's why they can get away with having smaller. And again, not to take any credit for other games. Other games,
sure, they did well for what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Mario, who had, 50 levels? And
yeah.
I mean...
But yeah, I mean, the fact that, even having 10 levels or less, than having completely different textures and backgrounds is pretty impressive for a game.
Yeah, actually, the one thing I really wanted to touch on while we talk kind of about graphics is I was really glad that when we booted it up, it was the original Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Uh-huh.
Just like with a high-def kind of gloss over it, as opposed to the rebuilt Conker's Live and Reloaded.
Yeah.
Because... And I don't know quite why. I'm wondering if it's frame rate. Because I'm guessing that Conker's Bad Fur Day is probably 30 frames a second on average.
Probably.
Whereas Live and Reloaded was probably leaning more towards like 45 or 60. And I think there's something about that robs the game of its comedy. Conker Live and Reloaded, like everything I said about it, it's well edited and everything's timed well, is like completely the opposite. If you play that game or watch some footage from that game, the same exact scenes play off as significantly less funny.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, like, the frame rate, everything moves so much more smoothly. The choppiness adds this weird kind of, like, this is how it looks and is stylized. It gives it a cartoon look, as opposed to sort of, like, I guess a computer-generated look.
I was going to say, like, that was one of the things when they first advertised the game. It looked like, well, I mean, the Live and Reloaded, it looked very, like, smooth and, like, fleshed out. You had the tail that had actual, like, fur. And it looked nice. But then when you see him like run around, it doesn't look like a cartoon at that point. It looks like you're watching like a CGI video.
Yeah.
And
it's just kind of something. It robs the game of its like humor tone for some reason.
Yeah.
So I was very glad to kind of go back and play that. And now they say it's just like, how well like the graphics hold up really well. I mean, they're the end of the N64 era. So if like something was going to hold up from that era, it would be Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just one of those things too that like it just shows another sign of the developers embracing what they had. Because you see a lot of people like, okay, we have these graphics, we have to work with them, but then you have these guys who just embraced it and use it. It's why I think it also helps in the fact that it does hold up.
It was probably I mean, I just played through some old Rare games in general. Probably, I bet most of those N64 Rare games hold up.
Yeah.
Had to play through some more of those. That Rare Replay. Play some of those.
Then you look at Nuts and Bolts and just
what happened there?
They got sold. Nintendo sold them.
Yeah.
Well,
there were several. It's not only that. I mean, we're doing the middle of a playthrough of Eternal Darkness, which is a fantastic game, and you kind of sit there and wonder like, what happened to this company?
Well,
they didn't make any game nearly this good after that.
Well, they also stole everything for what was that? Not Too Human, but
Metal Gear. There was a Metal Gear Solid remake they did right after that.
Yeah, no, but they made another game that came out for like Xbox, and it was basically
X-Men?
Maybe
because they only made 4 games.
Well, no, there was one they had to like completely take off the market because they stole the engine for it. Like they completely stole it. I watched the thing about Silicon Knights on YouTube like 2 weeks ago.
I know that they had a huge thing about Unreal. Like, they had something about Unreal.
Regardless of that,
something to go look up at another time.
Yeah. I'd be interested to look it up, but not now!
What was the point I was making?
Eternal Darkness.
Eternal Darkness, how it holds up.
Oh, yeah, well, about how, Nintendo, companies, when they're third-party working for Nintendo, they generally do very well, and it's like, so they get let go from Nintendo, and yeah, something really just drops out of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of bizarre. Like you can see it time and time again where it's one of those where it's so if you're a company owned by Nintendo, I would not try to leave.
Yeah.
You're probably doing as well as you're going to do.
Yeah.
You listen to me, Retro?
We're looking at you. But yeah, I mean, even looking at, with the Project Spark, I watched a video of a Conker story that was constructed through Project Spark. And, I mean, man, do the graphics look great, but does it not work? It really just doesn't work because it looks so hyper-real that it's just not even funny when you see the scared birdie.
Yeah, it makes me kind of wonder, like, so we were talking about, during the Let's Play, like, man, they should, eventually make a sequel to this. I wonder if a sequel would work in the same way.
It could. They might have to use a different kind of, like, animation. Like, even cell shading might work for it.
Yeah.
I think they'd have to take a different approach to it. Like, they couldn't have kind of this, like, realistic sort of, like, anthropomorphized squirrel thing going on like they had before, whereas it worked because of the lower res graphics and how they had to kind of interpret things.
But like back with what
they would have to find a way to make it more cartoonish.
Like they did the Project Spark thing. Everything looked like it was carved out of wood, and it looked really weird. And when you see Birdie, he just looks gross. He doesn't look funny at all. He doesn't look like humorous.
It's not like a sloppy, funny gross. It's just like disturbing.
But also, Valley.
Yeah.
The whole like game itself just felt really, really bad for Project Spark because the level design was really weak. I mean, they left it open. We're like, oh, you can make it how he gets home, but you kind of just get this feeling of like, no.
Honestly, part of me too is just like, I really don't want a sequel to Conker. I'd rather just have a spiritual successor to it.
Yeah.
Like something that is very similar in gameplay and tone.
That's what
similarly absurdist.
That's what I like about what they're doing with Banjo-Kazooie, where they have ukulele. Something like that, but for Conker.
Yeah. Well, it isn't necessarily but. Or even just a game that's kind of like Conker. It'd be nice to have, go with, pick maybe the South Park game will be kind of like that, the new one. Because I know it's more of a platformer than the last one was an RPG.
Is it a 2D or 3D thing?
I think it's a 2D platformer.
Okay, because I was going to say, they came out with one for Scott Tenorman, and it was pretty good, but that's not Conker's.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they are very interrelated, though, I feel, because Conker came out very shortly after South Park. They trade in very similar kinds of humor.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if anyone who really enjoys Conker's Bad Fur Day is also a fan of South Park.
Sure.
Yeah.
But heck, half the time I swear, like, my mom would walk by when I was playing Conker's Bad Fur Days and be like, "Is this South Park?"
I'm thinking about it again. Just what I think really works for the game, especially because it's such a concise narrative that is being constructed, is how simple the idea behind it is. You're trying to get back home, and I think that's something that a lot of games and even movies and some other stories that are out there just kind of miss. You don't need a complex thing where there's a prophecy where a red squirrel's going to come and shake up the kingdom.
Well, I mean, just think about like how it works in Banjo-Kazooie.
Black prophecies.
Like the whole setup is like, oh yeah, the witch steals your sister so she can steal her beauty, and just like, do we really need this much of an excuse to like have a plot to go and do things?
Yeah.
Like, Conker's Bad Fur Day is literally just like you're lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know where you are. You got to find your way home.
Yeah.
That it's about as simple as a blast you can get, and it really works because it just kind of allows them to go anywhere.
And then they even make fun of the idea of like complex parts whenever plots when they bring in the weasel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have this whole big thing about this exposition about the bomb and like with the bomb.
That's exactly what I was
It's like you
about.
could completely skip that, and you have one way to go.
Out the fucking window.
I don't know. I think that's just something that is so nice. And again, what the developers have so well embraced about the game is we have a simple concept, we're running with it, and you get a great game.
It'd be interesting to see like some behind the scenes as to like what Conker looked like when it was 12 Tales.
Oh, I mean, again, I watched that thing about Rare, but there was also a really nice thing about that when you actually played as like Barry, who looked a lot like a palette swap of Conker.
Oh yeah.
And it was just a cute, cartoony little adventure game. But can we also
said fuck it?
Yeah.
Can we what?
Also address the fact that the game really didn't give you the final boss fight. Like,
oh yeah,
they set it up as the Panther King is going to be your like main nemesis at the end of it because he's the one who drives the rest of the story that you don't really see. But at the end of it, he doesn't really do anything.
He gets killed by an unseen force that you weren't even expecting to happen.
It's just a nice, like...
No, it's funny, because again, there's another thing that we talked about in Let's Play. It's just like, how that drops in the end is like, here's twist 1, twist 2, twist 3, twist 4.
Yeah, it's like...
And here's twist 5, just for the hell of it. And it just kind of keeps turning things around on you. But again, I think that works, again, because it comes back to what Ben was talking about. It's absurdist.
Yeah.
And that is totally leaning in an absurdist direction. The idea, like, yeah, let's present to you this antagonist. You're going to face this guy at the end. This is your end boss. This is your end boss. And then you finally get to the end scene and he dies before you even fight him. It's just like, it doesn't really get much more absurdist for a video game than that. And then, you know, in the same scene, your girlfriend dies, like the only thing that you have going for you for the whole game.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I mean, that last scene is just full of turns and really dark, but yeah.
And then you do have a pseudo boss fight with the alien, but yeah.
It is a boss
yeah.
fight, but, like, yeah, well, I mean, you don't really even get to kill the alien at the end.
Yeah, exactly. You were denied the final blow, technically.
But what's funny is, yeah, even I don't feel like I was robbed in that.
No,
game.
exactly.
It feels like a satisfying conclusion
Exactly.
of what happens, even though it's like, yeah. And I think it's because, like you say, it's absurdist, and so much of the game is kind of playing the absurdist angle. And I think part of it too, it does give you enough chances, like in the war chapter, to be the hero.
Yeah.
Or in others, like I think the horror or the spooky chapter is probably another really good example of absurdism, because it's like, yeah, you go in there and nothing really happens, you get turned into a bat and then you escape and that's it.
Yeah.
You like maybe went up there to go try and find some money.
Nothing changes, nothing important happens, it's just...
You end up getting some guy killed.
Yeah.
And one of your ancestors.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say about the whole like final boss fight thing is it doesn't do what Fable 2 does to you, for example, where a spoiler, but
yeah, you're spoiling this for me, maybe. I don't remember playing Fable 2. But...
well, at the end of it, you have this guy who's set up as like your main nemesis, and it's set up to be this like big boss fight battle. And at the end of it, you're given the option of like, do you fight him or do you let him live? And if you take too long, your partner, Reaver, fucking just shoots him in the head in one shot, and the game is over. There's nothing more to do after that. Yeah. And you're robbed of it. And even if you do fight him, it only takes one hit to kill him anyway.
Yeah.
So...
it's a prime example of, like, that is where you're robbed of something. For a game that has set up realistic expectations of where you're going through the game. And that's why Conker's, again, works. It's absurdist. Being robbed...
It never really
doesn't feel like you're being robbed.
preps you for anything other than what's going on at the
exact moment. Exactly.
But it does a really good job at pumping you up for what you're doing at that exact moment.
Most of the time.
Right. I mean...
I guess if you're sort of like,
not.
I guess the other thing is a here's like one of my biggest criticisms of the game, if I had to come up with any, other than like the control scheme for the first-person shooter segments now that they changed it for Xbox.
Yeah.
But even that I was getting a little bit used to as it went on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got pretty
just
good
all
at
reversed. Yeah, but most bad control schemes is usually for me just a case of let me just get used to this, and then I'll be fine.
Right.
I very rarely play a game with like controls that are so bad. It's like no, I'm just constantly being like, screwed over by these bad controls. It won't do what I want it to do.
Right.
But, yeah, that, and I would say, like, some of the chunks of the first, like, half the story are a little bit loose in not the necessarily the best way. But even then, it's sort of like, I never feel disinterested in what's going on. And every time I go back to replay it, I'm always just like, oh, that's right, I get to go to this scene now.
Well, yeah, I guess I might agree with you, but I think it's also interesting and funny, especially because I think of one of the first things that happens is the barnyard. Well, I guess one of the first things that could happen. And how funny that turns out to be, that the haystack is like this big Terminator robot. It just, again, there's another element of absurdism. We're like, where the fuck did this come from?
Yeah, that's right, because this is in the middle of it. I think when we were playing that, it was like, why is this has just nothing to do with anything.
Exactly.
He's just a robot?
I think it's just like the later half of the game starts going into like more pop culture references that we kind of understand more. That it might be easy to just overlook the first half, but there's definitely a lot of stuff there that's just really funny and makes no sense why it's there.
Yeah, it is.
Especially like the whole thing with the bees and the hornets. You're just kind of like, what is this?
Just so many things. It's like someone wrote like one note on like a whiteboard, and then like someone else came by and wrote like a completely unrelated note on the whiteboard. They circled the two, and then someone else would come by and like write like 3 more notes, and then someone would come by and circle one of those, and eventually they'd have like a bunch of notes. Some were circled like, these are what we chose. Yeah. It's like wasps stealing a hive that has a machine gun turret inside of it. And it's just like, yeah, these weird things. It's like, yeah, a scarecrow who is an alcoholic and talks like this guy in our office.
But, yeah, I don't know.
As Burtis tries to run away in the middle of our our podcast.
Podcast.
But, yeah, I mean, I guess, do you have any criticisms about it as we kind of move towards the end here?
It's hard to... I'm not gonna say. I hate saying something's perfect.
Well, that's why it's always so like there's always room for something to grow. That's what I said. Like there's a looseness to the front end of things that maybe could have been a little bit better, but that may also be just a case of like. You have jokes. If you have to throw some at the wall and see what sticks, and sometimes
story-wise, I'm totally cool with what happened. I mean, yeah, I think control games, even back in the N64 days, maybe it could have been tighter. Maybe it could have been, I don't know.
I don't know about being on the N64. Like it was probably about as good as it was going to get. Because when you did that, you were doing it with the C buttons.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not going to say it's perfect. The game, yeah, there are some jokes I'm sure fall flat that I never really got before. But I don't know. I think the game is very subtly and very well constructed. That I have not ever seen a bad review of it, personally.
No, like it's. I think the worst criticism might be some people find this humor too crude for them.
And for me it's not.
I don't think it's. I mean, especially at this point with that kind of South Park and some of the humor you can find on YouTube and some other things, I was like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we make a point is like you kind of step back and go like, cause the other thing about crude humor too is it often ends up being more sexist than it is just crude, which is one of those things you kind of step back and go. Actually, Conker does a really nice job of mostly sidestepping around that.
Yeah.
I think the only way you can kind of step in and say it's sexist is because its female models are built in a way that's clearly you're supposed to be objectifying them, but the game knows that.
Yeah.
So it's more on a meta level. If you're looking at it and other games around it, it's like, well, they all are objectifying women. But like if you pull out Conker separately, it's like, yeah, but there's very clear, like a clear sort of thematic reason why they built these characters this way. It's not just because they're supposed to be hot or or not supposed to be hot. It's because like we're trying to draw sort of this absurd.
Well, just think how Conker reacts to some of these situations. Other characters react to these situations, like the king bee with the flower. He's clearly kind of a scummy character.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you're not really supposed to be like, yeah, you fuck that flower. You're just kind of like, you have Conker's reaction. We're like, oh.
Well, at least they're enjoying it.
Yeah. And then you have the same thing with the big Amazonian cave lady, where Conker's kind of a douche by that point. You kill a baby dinosaur, you run a bomb, and you start like a cult with all these little guys that worship you. You're kind of a dick, and that's just with him. His reaction to that lady after he dethrones her.
I think another neat thing to point out about the game is you don't necessarily really play as the hero. There's plenty of anti-heroes going on in that game.
Yeah. I mean, the king was probably very bad, but at the same time...
But the Panther
Conker, Conker...
You don't really get that much. I mean, it could just live, like, the way they cut away is like him roaring at his subjects, but when you cut back, you can see they're clearly okay. So it's sort of like... They have all this, like, implied backstory about him, but how mean or evil is he really?
Yeah.
You really actually could make a compelling case.
Stories.
Yeah, like, you could pretty much make a compelling case. It's like, he's the good guy. He's just having a bad day.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, that's actually a fair point. I this happens in almost just about every Let's Play that at least Burtis and I play, where we keep wondering, are we the bad guys? And in most cases, no.
You guys gotta play some games where you're actually playing like as the good guy. It's it's giving you karma, so you can feel good about yourselves.
Yeah,
it's giving me good karma. That means I have to be the good guy.
Yeah.
Because the game's telling me I'm good.
Yeah, right.
Let's go, KOTOR.
But yeah, maybe the Panther King really wasn't
so bad.
Yeah, because the only thing I ever really get is when Conker says, the feared Panther King, but maybe it is just a spook
you call him the fairy.
Yeah.
I mean, and at the same time, like, you look around, the land is clearly doing all right, except for
a bunch of drunks everywhere.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. It's not like he unleashed the Great Mighty Pooh, or like he had anything to do with your vampire ancestor.
Maybe the Great Mighty Pooh, that's just his home.
Yeah.
Maybe he got invaded by those bugs.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I
don't know. Interesting stuff to ponder and think about.
There's a deep well here.
And I guess the Teddies were technically the scientists, not the Panther Kings.
Yeah, I mean, the scientist was...
He mentions that as a plot point in the last cinema scene.
Yeah, he was kind of running rogue at that point.
So... Yeah, I mean, you can't even blame, like, the Teddy, like, assaults on...
Yeah, honestly, the Professor Weasel makes a much better antagonist for you. He stands out as more of the antagonist to you than the Panther King.
The King just... Well, yeah, that's the stupid part. The King just wanted to fix for his table. He didn't even come up with the solution, find me a red squirrel.
Yeah.
The scientist does. The scientist says, we need a red squirrel.
He's also the one that gives Conker his first chocolate.
Yep.
True. Chucks it out the window.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I guess so. Parting thoughts on Conker.
And that chocolate.
Well, come on.
Okay. stay with us. We're almost done.
We've got just about 5 more minutes of talking about Conker's Bad Fur Day period, and then we can get out of chocolate backs, Burtis. You can go make one, and I don't know.
My parting thoughts with Conkers is I wish there were more games like this. I'm not saying I want a lot of games, because I don't want to be oversaturated, but I would like to see more games with a very tight narrative with the same kind of crude humor, a spiritual successor, if you will.
I'd just like to see, more humorous games.
Yeah.
You see some of them every once in a while. There's again, talking about somebody else, someone completely different from us. Oh, gosh. What's his name? Some Birch.
Oh, I thought you were
the guy did, Hey, Ash, What You Playing? And he wrote Borderlands 2.
Oh.
But he did a really interesting talk about how humor in video games is hard. It's harder than other mediums.
Sure.
Because of the interactive element of it, and why, sometimes the funniest things in video games are things that happen randomly while you're playing the game, not so much things that happen plot-wise to you. So it sort of was, I'd really like to see some more game developers tackle that challenge that they very clearly laid down.
Well, on the topic of Borderlands 2, I think he succeeded in comedy in that one. I would have figured that would have been a hard one to accomplish.
I mean, they also accomplished a lot of drama and
but even then, I think of Double Fine, that company. Brutal Legend is one of those games that is
Brutal Legend's pretty good. I would point out Psychonauts, I think, is a far funnier, better game.
Yeah. I was trying to remember what the other game was. I can only think
How
of
could you
Monkey?
remember Brutal Legends and not Psychonauts?
This is the most recent one I played.
Psychonauts is it's one of the best platforming games of all time. That might have to be a Let's Play coming up soon.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh. I don't know. I just want to see more things like that. Hell, I'll bring it back. I want to see more absurdist games. Not even just humorous games, just absurdist games. It's a very interesting concept that not many people look at because they think it's ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. But it's also pointing out the ridiculousness of everything. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more philosophies being explored in games because I think games are a great platform for that. Yeah, that's why we're doing story mode.
That's the purpose of this story mode.
Yeah.
To get developers on developers' cases to make some
good
more
game.
Interesting, thematically strong games.
Yeah.
Not getting away with, man, the gameplay and this is so much fun, but what about everything around the gameplay?
Yeah, I know. Why are you playing the game?
Good too.
Yeah.
Burtis, any parting thoughts from you?
I'm really focused on chocolate.
I knew it. I fucking knew it. I fucking something that had nothing to do with the game, except for our own interactions with it. Oh my god!
I just keep thinking about the floating chocolate, and it brings me back to the textures. But just everything about that game made me want to look more at it, and I would like to see. I guess I don't want to say more of that because games that are coming out now are almost photorealistic, and it's hard to say they're not doing a good job of it. But I feel like for cartoony games that just focus on having fun, you don't see a whole lot of that color palette and that bright cheery color as well as the dark brooding colors.
The only thing I was thinking about as you talk about I want to see more like that is it'd be great too to see some movies like that.
Oh, well.
There is one coming out this week.
Yeah.
Sausage Party.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's just it kind of made me think about it. It's there's a little bit more common to get a game that's a bit more like that than is a movie.
Yeah.
The last movie before that you'd have to go to, it was South Park the movie. Or Team America.
Yeah, but in terms of maybe Team America.
In terms of I don't know, could you, because that's puppets, not really a cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I guess my sort of parting thoughts are, Conker's Bad Fur Day is one of my favorite games. I really don't have a top 5 or that I could easily pick out. It's just sort of this game is one of my favorites. And replaying it was just sort of there are some parts here that get frustrating, or just this isn't working for me. You can hear me when you play the Let's Play. And my brother liked to point out when he was listening, he's I was having flashbacks watching you play games when I was a kid in the same room. I couldn't understand how people would stay there with you. Those guys,
forced.
Yeah, those guys need to get out. I tied them down.
Our chairs are tied.
He threatened our families.
I threatened your cats.
Yeah.
Just hear small explosions in the background.
I just want to. I've mentioned several times it's held up amazingly well.
Yeah.
Especially for the kind of the era of games it came from, where a lot of those games don't.
And they just kind of blend together. Conker's really does stand out above it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's got a story that's like actually way better than like a lot of games around it. It's really an incredible game. And if you haven't played it, find this, and you have an Xbox, pick up the Rare Replay. It's really worth it.
I promise we're not sponsored.
Yeah.
Unless we
Our
are.
pockets are empty.
Unless we are. God, pay us!
We aren't sponsored until we are.
Yeah.
I'm so hungry.
I just want chocolate bags.
That's what you need to do, Burtis. You need to start developing those and selling them. Like
There you go.
Jacob Burtis' chocolate bag.
Every year comes up with a new model until I die.
Oh. I can't imagine what the ones when you're 70 are like. Ugh.
I bet there's more chocolate.
Okay.
And we're done.
And this is the point where we decide that, thank you for listening to Story Mode.
Yep.
Listening to us talk about Conker. If you'll notice, there's probably very swear-filled, this one. Since Conker is a not-safe-for-work video game, I'm not going to be censoring the swears in this, which is great to tell you at the very end of the podcast.
Right,
So, when you go and rewatch it, make sure you know in advance. Way to go, me. But thank you very much for listening to Story Mode. Next week, we're going to be talking about Dragon Age. So tune in for that.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
All right,
Later,
next time,
guys.
guys.